I appreciate you taking the time just to kind of connect and talk a little quarterbacks.
Yeah, man. Anytime, I'm really appreciative of you reaching out to me.
Absolutely. So we kind of started this series in the sense of just trying to connect with more college coaches to, give our players and just overall quarterbacks across the country the ability to learn kind of what the evaluation process is like, what the recruiting process is like, how they can better be seen, what they need to show on tape, all those good things. So we have had a couple conversations, and excited to get you on the phone and kind of talk about what you guys look for at Bryant, um,
Mhm.
and kind of go from there. So I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll start.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm Sebastian Moore. I'm the assistant quarterbacks coach at Bryant. Um, I only position I can really talk about, are the positions that I've personally evaluated for, that I've been, given the privilege of being able to evaluate for. So like nickel, safety, defensive line, quarterback, receiver.
Yeah.
Um, those are the main positions that I've actually looked at. So I can start, at nickels. Nickels, we look for a guy who's like long, 6 feet, 6'1", 6'2", long arms, athletic, rangy, is a good open field tackler and can cover the slot, especially underneath, 14, 16 yards. That's really important because that's like scheme specific. And that's pretty much it for nickel.
Coach, we can really focus in on the quarterback side of things if you want. That's kind of the majority of where at least we are. We don't have the nickels yet in the sense of the development. So would love to kind of hone in on what you guys look for from a quarterback perspective and kind of uh, avenue the conversation that way.
Okay, that sounds good. So yeah, that sounds good. So at quarterback, there's some things that I specifically look for, and then there's things that we look for as a program. As a program, our quarterbacks coach, Coach Anderson, for the most part, he likes kids who, first of all, good grades, because if a kid has good grades, then they're probably going to have more of a business approach to how they handle their business, and they're going to be more the type of young man who's going to put in the work outside of meetings and outside of practice, in terms of like learning the playbook and learning defenses and things of that nature. And I'm pulling up, because I literally just did a presentation on this. So I was just going to pull up and just kind of talk
Yeah,
about
would love to see it.
my my part. So that's where it starts with him, with Coach Anderson. And then he likes guys who are athletic, in terms of like just the type of kids who they generally have a good sense of control of their body, like balance and coordination and agility and quick feet. He was, one of the things that he always likes to say is, you know, if I put you, you've never played basketball, but if I put you in a varsity basketball game in any state in the country, could you at least function, and that's like a big thing, with him, and that makes a lot of sense as well to me. Um, so yeah, and then of course being able to hit a target is really
Sure.
big. Things that we've talked about. Um, and then next is just the ability to like actually pick up the offense in terms of like being able to like process, information and stuff like that. Those are some of the main things that we've talked about as far as what we look for at Bryant. And then I have a whole thing that I can kind of go through with you. Actually, let me see. I might be able to pull it up. I pulled it up on my computer, but I actually thinking more. I can probably just pull it up on my phone because I'm on my phone
Yep.
and I was
Probably,
having
you could
trouble.
probably share your screen too if you want to.
Yeah, yeah, I'll
Live
do
here.
that.
From a grades perspective, coach, as you kind of pull that up, is there a minimum? Obviously, Bryant's a high academic university, right? Is there a minimum grade point average that you guys look for and say like, hey, like in order to kind of get into Bryant, we need you at a 3.0 or above, right? And like if you're below that, it just becomes a lot tougher for us to be able to get you in, right? Or is it kind of like, hey, like depending on what your skill level is and what your GPA is, like we can figure a way to recruit accordingly.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much exactly how it is. Like you have to have at least a 2.7, um, but you also you know you have to have a 2.7 to like actually like be able to be on the team.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
we have several guys in our quarterback room that have 4.0s, that
Yep.
3.9s, you know, stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I would definitely say that like, I always say a minimum of 3.3. I'm
Love
trying
it.
to see how this. Okay, can you? Okay, it's supposed to say
Yeah,
that you can
yeah.
see my
We can
screen.
see
Can you
it.
see
We
my?
can see it. Yep, we're good to go.
Okay,
This is awesome.
perfect. Okay, so I'll pretty much tell you what I look for specifically. So quarterbacks that I love, Cam's in person evaluation is best. I kind of ask the question: can you really see footwork and release on grainy huddle film? I don't
It's
think
hard,
you
man.
you
It's
can.
so hard.
Yeah, I don't think you can. So I like quarterbacks to come in person. Now I know that there's like a stigma around like kids come into camps because it's like a moneymaker for the college and all that type of crap. And I get that. But at the quarterback position, and maybe even defensive back and receiver, I really feel as though we have to be able to bring you on campus, put you through some three cone drills, put you through some agility drills. Look at you in one on one. And actually as a quarterback, actually see you throw the ball. I think that's extremely important. Can he throw? I talked about that earlier when I talked about what Coach Anderson looks for in our quarterbacks, being able to just consistently hit a target. No mechanical issues. I go with the Ray Allen mentality. Back in the day when I watched basketball and football when I was a kid, they interviewed Ray Allen. They asked him, how's he such a consistent shooter? And he said he focuses on his biomechanics, and then he shoots with those correct biomechanics every single time. He said that it's almost like a checklist in his mind, where his feet are placed. Releasing the ball at the top of his jump shot. Release. All those type of things. The same thing with quarterback. Align to
Absolutely.
your target. Your arms follow your hips, your shoulders follow your hips. Release. You know, all those type of things. Foot in front of your target. You know, it's like a mental checklist of what you need to do biomechanically, to be able to throw a ball accurately every single time. And so that's kind of the same thing, you know. And so I like private quarterback coaches because, they basically prepare the players to get to our level from a biomechanics standpoint. Those kids who have had private quarterback coaches since they were in sixth grade, it's very seldom that they still have biomechanical flaws in their throw by the time they're seniors in high school.
Sure.
It is very rare that you see that, at least for a kid who was a prospect.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be kids that they've been playing football, but they're just not good athletes. I mean, that's the average population. But the kids who are legitimate, like prospects that we can evaluate, it's seldom that they have those biomechanical issues when they have quarterback coaches since the eighth grade. And this is a quick video that I have in my presentation. So it's basically like Josh Allen. You see he has a really compact delivery. He's standing straight up in the pocket. His shoulders are squared. This is him, like this throw right here is him now. Whereas when you go back when he was at Wyoming, I was
He was
saying
bent
compact.
over. He was
Yeah,
falling, the whole thing. I'm a Bills fan, coach. So we watched it growing up. In 2018, it was the thing was all over the place.
it was bad. It was bad. So he worked with quarterback coaches and he really fine tuned his craft. And he was probably the first quarterback who, and actually Aaron Rodgers was probably first, but then
Sure.
you know, Allen, he was probably like the next like big name quarterback that really improved his mechanics, which then improved his accuracy. Um, So marksman, like, is he a marksman? Like, can he hit a target? That's extremely important. Like, consistently being able to hit a target. Can he make every throw? So does he have the arm strength to hit, a deep over to the field, a deep comeback to the field, a nine ball to the field, can he put the ball on a rope, on a back shoulder throw? Those are type of arm strength that we want to see. Does he understand like the differences between one, two, and three balls? Layering and projection on the ball and like the time space element of where the receiver is in relation to the reception area. So what that means is he able to hit a receiver in stride because he's able to correctly estimate where he has to put the ball in relation to where the receiver will catch the ball in time, catch the ball in stride from a time and space element. So basically, like, can he act? Is he gonna overthrow
Sure.
receivers? Is he gonna underthrow receivers? That's basically like the layman's way to kind of ask that question in the
Absolutely.
evaluation process. And so this right here is an example of when I was a quarterbacks coach, at Bridgewater State, and I talked about like layering the ball and in between two defenders, so over the linebacker there and right underneath the safety, one more time. So, and that was it was in practice, but it was for a touchdown. But that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Us or nobody, and when you throw the ball, it needs to go to us or nobody. That you can't stress that enough. There's another clip when I was at, Bridgewater State. Oh, hold on for a second. There we go. So it's right here is an RPO to the field, and then we have quick out. And but if you look at where he put the ball, let me see if I can.
Yeah, it's the placement of it. Outside shoulder, outbreaking route, making sure that corner
Mhm.
can't get to it. Absolutely.
Exactly. Us or nobody. So that's a good example of that. And then is he an athlete? The details of the position, require athleticism. And I put Tom Brady and Peyton Manning there because you know, they are not really known for being athletes, but when you actually look at them, playing quarterback position, I mean, here he is, he starts to the boundary, he works back to the field, and then he has to align his body to the target so you can make an accurate throw. Here he's evading a rusher. I mean, that's core strength, that's trunk strength, that's hip mobility, that's quick feet to be able to move in the pocket and then get back in line with your target. So here he starts in the field, goes to the boundary, goes back to the field, still evading the rusher, goes back to the boundary, aligns himself to the target, and makes the throw. So, I mean, those are like the little details of the position that I mean that require athleticism. Does he have quick hips? Well, not quick hips, quick feet. Does he have hip mobility? Does he have core strength and balance? And things of that nature. Business approach to football. We talked about that in terms of like putting in the time and the effort to actually, learn the playbook, learn defenses, process oriented, makes routine plays and routinely. So what that means is he has a process on everything that he does. He follows our process. So if a concept starts to the boundary, there should never be an instance where his eyes are on the field. At the snap.
Absolutely.
We want a quarterback that is process oriented, play within the system and run the offense. And I think I talk about that later on this in the same portion of my presentation. So let's see here. So this is a what I mean about making the routine plays routinely. So this is our backup quarterback at Bryant and he's a lefty. We have an RPO, okay? And we have the alert to the field, and he has to flip his hits, align to his target, get the ball out on time, good ball placement, so he can try to get some yak. And that's a routine play for a Division 1 quarterback. I mean, that's why he's a Division 1 quarterback, because this is a routine play for a Division 1 quarterback. So the question that you must ask is this a type of play you can make consistently? And if you can, then you're probably you know a evaluatable prospect, if that's even a word, somebody who is worthy of
Wow.
evaluation.
What a play.
Yeah. So I mean, just making the routine plays, routinely, that's important. Being able to do, things like this consistently, that's really important. Um, more on evaluation. So holds himself accountable. And I had a story, basically I was telling the kids when I was the quarterbacks coach at Bridgewater State, I said, hey, you know, um, put your stats in the group chat because we want to be able to be transparent on where everybody stands in the room, where we need to improve on. And when we decide who the quarterback is, it should be pretty apparent to everybody, and holding yourself accountable. So, those guys who had really good days, 9 for 10, 2 touchdowns, they would put in their stats immediately. And the guys who didn't have a good day, it would take about 3 4 hours for them to put their stats in.
Sure.
But they eventually did, and that's a good sign of holding yourself accountable and having self awareness because that's what we need. Because you got to be a leader and likable. That's huge. You have to be likable. I think it's a certain element of being like um a salesperson, a politician, not in a negative way, but in a positive way in terms of being very personable and very likable when you're playing quarterback. Because for that, you have to be able to hold others accountable. If you are not likable, you cannot hold other people accountable because they're going to be defensive. They're going to think that you're coming at them from a different place as opposed to you're only coming at them from a place of, hey, we have a common goal we want to accomplish, and so this is what I'm trying to do to help us reach that common goal. And so if you're not likable, you can't hold others accountable. um and so and here's a clip. you know 49ers, you have Mac Jones, the receivers are running the wrong route. There's an issue to the top of the screen. The spacing and time is completely off. He has to eat it. Situations like that, we don't want that to happen in the game. When they happen in practice, I expect the quarterback to say something. I expect the quarterback to go to the receiver, whichever one of those two guys messed up the route, and messed or did forgot the route because they basically ran the wrong route or
Sure.
the wrong depth. I expect the quarterback to say, "Hey, I need you to make sure that you're on the same page with, me so that I can get you the ball." You know,
Absolutely.
and making it about, hey, I need you in order for us to be successful. And that's the same thing on my approach for as a quarterback coach to the players. I need you to for us to be successful. Without you, I can't be successful. Without you, performing at your best, then we're not going to have success. And when you continuously put it on them, the players have more ownership, and it also continues to develop the relationship. So holds others accountable, protects the football. If you can't protect the football, you lose football games. So making good decisions, having good ball security, those are extremely important, or you can't play at this level or any level at that matter. Makes everyone right. I had a really good example of that, from Bryant. Um, so here, just real quick, we have a concept to the bottom of the screen to the boundary. We have a snag route by one, and we have a rail route by the tailback. And the tailback, his aiming point is the bottom of the numbers, and the snag is a 6 yard, basically hook, and the aiming point is inside on the heels of the defender who's responsible for the running back. And pre-snap, the defense made a really good call and they shifted. And the guy that we expected to get the rub on, we didn't get the rub on. And also there was some leakage in the protection. And so this was just a bad play, altogether. It's not necessarily a bad call or bad execution. It was just a lot of different occurrences that led to a bad play. But having the type of quarterback that we have, our starting quarterback and our backup quarterback were as good quarterbacks that I've seen in terms of ability. Now, was there consistent play the whole time from the entire offense? No, and that reflected in the stats and in the win column, but they are really good quarterbacks. And those are the type of quarterbacks I would recruit tomorrow. But this is some of the things that we saw. These are some of the highlights. So bad play, leakage. We didn't get the rub. If you see the snag route on the bottom of the screen, we didn't get the rub, and he basically throws it off his back foot. Only our receiver or nobody can get it for a touchdown.
Love
That
it.
that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Making everybody right. You know, he's the difference in the margins. When everything is tight.
Absolutely. I mean, what a throw.
hmm So Next on that, where am I at on this? So toughness, both mentally and physically, like playing the position, you have to be mentally tough. You have to be able to shake off, mistakes. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be coachable. And then physical toughness is probably as important as any other characteristic in a quarterback. We led the conference in fewest sacks allowed, but sometimes there's still going to be times where you get hit, and I expect you to sit there and deliver the ball under pressure, knowing you're going to get hit. I don't want to see an alligator arm on your release. I don't want to see flaws in your mechanics because the hit is coming. I expect there to be seamless mechanics. I expect there to be a seamless delivery, and I expect it to be an accurate ball under duress. I mean, it's part of the position. If you don't want to get hit, go play tennis. You know, but this right here is a perfect example I'm talking about. You know, he's sitting there. They schemed this up. They had a nice creeper from the field. He gets hit. He knows he's getting hit. Ball is either us or nobody. To the tight end. Great ball placement. Great timing, great footwork. That these are some of the things that we're looking for. He actually had several of these, so I have three of these. Here's another one. He's about to get hit. He knows he's about to get hit. Delivers the ball. Perfect ball placement for a touchdown. Once again, he's the difference in the margins. Another time,
Absolutely.
about here we go. Another time, about to get hit. Dang it! What is going on here? Let me see here. There we go. So again, he's about to get hit. Knows he's about to get hit, delivers an accurate ball in between two defenders, us or nobody. So, and you hear me talk, and I'm repetitive because those are the coaching points that are critical. That should sound like a broken record to the players. Us or nobody, you know, that's huge. Um, so detail oriented, we talked about that. Plays within the system, understands what's open and takes it. Runs the offense. Take the first, reading the progression when it's open. Move on to the second read on time. Don't stay on one read because that's your boy, because that's your guy.
Sure.
I'm big on giving it to playmakers, but run the offense. Remember I was talking about earlier, if your eye's supposed to start to the boundary, on the snap, your eye shouldn't be starting on to the field. If the read is low to high, the progression is low to high, you shouldn't be trying to look for the money ball first. Work the offense, work low to high. If low is open, take it. If the cross is open, take it. Then go ahead and work the shot. But these plays are designed for a specific reason. So the expectation is for you to run the offense. And then a quarterback who competes immediately, because you really never know when he will get on the field. That's what I mean by that. So a quarterback who can compete for the job means he has physically the tools to play Division 1 quarterback. The development piece is not developing him into a quarterback. The development piece is getting him up to speed on the playbook, getting him up to speed on understanding and mastering defenses. If I have to fine tune mechanics, if I have to fine tune your footwork, if I have to fine tune your timing or anything like that, helping you to understand ball placement and things like that, then I'm behind the eight ball. I
Sure.
want to be able to just teach you our offense and teach you defenses, and then put you on the field in a position for you to make plays. So we want a quarterback who can compete immediately. Um, and recruiting casts a wide net. So, perfect example, you have to embrace the grind. When I was at BSU in Boston, okay, Bridgewater State, I was in Division 3 level. I found a quarterback in Florida. He's a senior. He had three other Division 3 offers, and I looked at his film. I'm going to show you his film. We brought him up. Well, he didn't. We didn't bring him up. He came up on campus. We saw him throw. We saw his footwork. We put him on the board. It was a very thorough evaluation.
Love it.
We ended up offering this kid a roster spot, and he also got some academic money that we were able to kind of, you know, pull some strings on, and I'll leave it at that. But
Sure.
basically, the what you're seeing on film is kind of what I was talking about, what I look for. Here's the the slot fade to the field, catching it in stride, understanding the space and time element, Here's another one. We talked about understanding that you have to be tough. He's about to get hit, delivers the ball. We talked
Great
about
ball.
projection, in between two defenders, understanding the difference between a 1, 2, and 3 ball. This ball can't be put on the line. This ball has to be, a 2 ball, up and then down into the basket. He understands that. Here's another one. Talked about arm strength, the go ball to the field. Is he going to hit him in stride? Absolutely, because
Love
that's
it.
the type of quarterback that he is. And so, you know, I found, this young man, like I said, we signed him, and he didn't start immediately. I ended up taking the job at Bryant, and so I didn't coach him. He was coached by the coaches at BSU this fall, and they did an excellent job with him. But we're about to see some of the things that we saw in the recruiting process on film. Understanding the time and space element. Hitting the receiver in stride. You know,
Absolutely. Coach, when you and I don't want to take up too much more of your time because this, I mean,
okay.
it was an unbelievable presentation. This is awesome. Um, the one question I do want to ask of you, and it's more for these 27, 28 guys that are getting recruited, 29 guys that are starting to get recruited. How do they, in your opinion, how do they separate themselves? How do they get seen by Bryant? Because right now it feels like everybody's sending the Twitter DMs and they might come up to camp or might not, but how do they get on your radar where you're like, this guy could be a Bryant quarterback or this guy's not a Bryant quarterback, where they can get their film in front of the entire staff?
So I think the number one thing is coming to camp. Because at the end of the day, when you come to camp, that's when everything kind of changes. And like I said, I understand that there's a stigma out there that camp is like, a moneymaker and blah blah blah. But you know, sending a DM, sending an email, we get hundreds and
Hundreds.
hundreds and hundreds of those.
Yep.
It's just like jobs, and I hate that this is the society that we live. Anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I hate it. I hate it that it's all who you know. It's who you know in the job market. It's who you know in coaching for sure. It's even who you know in recruiting. I'm learning, being on this side, because when I was on the other side, there were always some exceptions. I coached a defensive lineman who didn't play until his junior year of high school because of his grades, but he was 6'6" and he was 290, and he was extremely athletic and extremely powerful, and he got an offer at Alabama, um at Alabama when Nick Saban was there before he played a varsity game. So there's always going to be exceptions,
Sure.
but for the most part, when everybody is roughly the same, the who you know part really makes a difference in our society here in America, which is kind of sad. But um, so like obviously, if your head coach at your high school knows a coach on our staff, and it's like, hey, you got to take a look at this guy, and it's a guy that our coaches trust, then that's always going to put you in a better position. Me personally, I don't, because I'm so against, just the way things are in our society about the who you know stuff. I'm not really like that. Really, what works for on me is just persistence. If you are constantly, posting under my posts, that's where I see. There was a kid who we didn't end up offering him a scholarship, but I brought him to the linebackers coach and I said, hey, I think you should take a look at this kid. He was always, posting, hey coach, just checking in, or he would actually engage with what I was posting about, and it kind of brought my attention to him. And then I looked at his film, and he was a pretty good player. He had good measurables. He was what we were looking for. And like I said, I brought him to the linebackers coach, and we ended up going in a different direction for whatever reason. But that was an opportunity for him.
Sure.
That was further than what he would have gotten by just sending a bunch of DMs and emails, because we get hundreds and thousands of those. But I'd say, if your head coach or your trainer knows coaches very, 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 very well, to the point where they could text the coach will respond within an hour and say, hey, take a look at this kid. That is probably going to be number one. Number two is probably going to be camp, because we're actually seeing you in person, we're actually seeing you in person in one-on-ones. in competitive situations. Third is being persistent, and like I said, thinking outside the box, posting under my post as opposed to, sending me DMs and emails because I get hundreds of those. And then the last part, which kind of only applies to 0.0001% of the population, which is just outstanding play. Like if you are a 6'4", even though the kid that I recruited who ended up going to Division 3 was 6'4". I mean, he's still at BSU. He
Sure.
entered the portal and he's still at BSU, which is partially some of the who element. But he's 6'4", 215, has a big arm like we saw. Pretty athletic. He's not Lamar Jackson, but he's athletic. He's tough. They won more games. When he started after the first 4 games. I say all that to say if you're somebody like him, the odds of you going Division 1 are pretty high, even though it didn't in his case. But you know, if you are, lighting it up, it's really hard for you to miss. If you're lighting it up and you have measurables, it's really, really, really hard for you to miss. Um, and it's less likely to happen. So those would be the
Absolutely.
4 things in terms of like if you really want to get recruited, those 4 things are critical.
I love it. Coach, this was unbelievable. Really, really appreciate you taking the 30 minutes out of your day to kind of, teach us what you guys look for in the Bryant quarterback room. I had a ton of questions. You answered all of them. You know what I mean? And that was really, really cool. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to be able to do this. So
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime, man. Thank you.
absolutely, Coach. I'll shoot you a text after this and get your number and everything, and hope to have you on soon again. And we'll go from there.
Sure, anytime. Love it.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Coach. Talk to you soon.
All right, you too. Bye bye.
Bye.